Hey guys, this is Karen from Blue Rooster Farm, and today we are finishing up my Snowman bed runner, and we are going to be putting a scalloped or waved edge on our border. So if you want to see how to do that, stick around. So like I said in the intro, today we're going to take this bed runner and we are going to be adding a waved or scalloped edge to it. Now normally we'll just put a binding on it and it's good, and I think it would look great that way, but I think it would look really good with a scalloped or waved border. And I'm choosing to do a waved just because it's a little bit of an easier curve. This is the first time I'm trying it. I have had the ruler that I'm going to be using for many years, thinking I was going to be doing one, and I just have never gotten around to doing a waved or scallop border. And I think they look really nice on quilts. So we are going to be taking this right here and adding one today. So let me bring you down to the cutting table. All right, so here we are at the table, and of course this is too long for you to see all in one piece, but I've just kind of got it folded up here. And so what I did when I made my bed runner, first thing I did was I took one snowman and the snowflake blocks, that whole unit, and then I added another whole unit, and then I added just a plain snowman. Okay, so that was the size that I needed for a queen size bed. It still didn't hang over quite as much as what I thought would look nice, and you want to lay yours out and see what you think. It could go down farther too, but I just wanted it to be on the top with just a little bit of a hangover, and I think this will be perfect. But then I added, because at the bottom of our snowmen, we just had this edge right here. So I added a piece that it was a 1.5 inch strip, but now that it's sewn in, it's 1 inch. And I just added that all the way across the bottom of this runner with these blocks on it. Then I took and added 2 side pieces, one on each side. And these right now measure, let's see what they are. These are 2.5 inch pieces finished. So I cut a 3 inch piece that was the height of the snowman block plus this 1 inch, and I attached it to this side, and the same thing over here. Again, that was a 3 inch piece of fabric that was the height of the snowman and this 1 inch piece. So cut it according to the length. After I had all of that fit together, then I added my border. And I didn't add a 1 inch piece at the top because remember, we had about a 1 inch piece up here already. So we didn't need to add an additional piece up here. So on my borders, what I used is, let's see what I cut. I cut, it looks like a 4 inch piece. And so once it's all sewn in and the binding's on, it's going to be a 3.5 inch binding. So I used 4 inch, it's going to be a 3.5 inch border. I used a 4 inch strip. You can make whatever size border you want. If you make it longer, it will just go farther down on your bed. It will be pretty wide going this way. And so you might watch and see what you like on that. So the first thing, and then of course I quilted it. It's all quilted, and it is kind of a wind quilt. Maybe you can see it a little bit better over there. There you go. Looks like a winter wind is what it is. And of course I went ahead and put the applique snowman, and I am not going to add eyes because you guys said in your comments that you liked it without eyes. I know some people liked it with eyes, but the majority of you said no eyes, and I'm glad because that's what I liked too. And I still have, I think I'm gonna pop the eyes off my pillow. I just don't like those eyes. And it could be that some of you said make them farther apart or use a different color. I agree, that would probably look better, but I really actually like it without the eyes. I think it looks so much nicer. So let's get back to this. So now I want to turn this into a runner with a scalloped or a waved edge. And so I need a ruler, and this is the ruler that I have. And I have had this ruler for over 5 years, and I just opened it today. And this is a Quilt in a Day Scallops, Vines, and Waves template. And you can still find this. It's a very popular ruler. In fact, I think it's one of the go-to rulers for making your vines and your scallops and your waves. So I'll put a link in the description box for it, but basically any quilt store near you, I'm sure would have it, or they would know about it and they could order it for you. So we're going to use this ruler, and in this ruler we have directions, and this tells you everything you need to know. Now, it's supposed to be kind of no math, make it easy. But I have found that you can do it the easy way and not use math and just kind of follow what it says and do it. But if you like to have a different look or a different number of waves, you will have to do some math. So this ruler will do 3 things. It will draw the lines for your applique vines so that you can have them nice and neat. It will make waved edges on a quilt, or it will make scalloped edges on a quilt. And scalloped are just a little trickier to bind because there's a tight spot right there in that valley, whereas on the waves, it's pretty gentle. It's not difficult, it's just a little more tricky than this. From what I've seen people doing and talking about, either one would be fine. I prefer this one for this runner, so I'm gonna do this one. But I do have ideas for this on another quilt, so I will be using it for this in another quilt. So it's going to walk us through how to do the waved edge. They call it the waved edge. And so it gives you the directions of the vines. And then you get to here, and we have some easy calculation charts. And just like I said, if you don't want to do the math, you can use these. And it shows you how to make waved edges, okay? And you're gonna have 2 options for corners. One is the rounded corner, one is the pointed corner, but it will walk you through all of that. Then you have directions for making the scalloped border, and you also have your calculation charts over here for the scalloped border. But we're gonna do the waved border. So basically what it says is it wants you to go up to your border, and you are needing to take this corner and draw lines. So we can have right here, we just continue this line from where our border was stitched on and do the same thing over here, and this is actually the seam right here. But we just took the corner out of that border. And you're going to want to do the same thing on all corners. Just extend those seam lines so you have a nice square. And I am using a friction pin, and I know that I talk about not liking to put these on my quilts on the tops, but because I want it to be a nice dark line for this video, I'm going to go ahead and risk it. So I'm just going to continue making this right here. And this square is a 3 3/4 inch square. Now, once you have gotten all your squares drawn, you are going to measure from this line here that you drew to this line over here. And basically you're finding the width of this panel in this inside. So from this edge to this edge, and the bottom should be the same. If it's not, just kind of find the average. And then you're going to do the same for between this edge and this edge. Okay? So I've done that, and my numbers ended up being about 59.5 by 22.5. That's just between those lines. So now we're going to take our chart, and I said one side was 59.5, that's the top and the bottom, and I need to look, this is the length minus the corners, and they get larger as we go down, and so finally I get to the area that 59.5 should be in, and it says 58.5, it says 63. Mine is right between, the closest is 58.5, and it is saying that we have 9 waves 6.5 inches wide. So if I use this measurement on my top and my bottom, I can get 9 waves that are 6.5 inches wide. And if you look at your ruler, you would mark it 6.5 on this side, 6.5 on this side, and that's how wide your vine would be. And then it would start going the other direction, come up, and so you'd just be going back and forth, okay? Now if we use the measurement for the side, it is 22.5. We can find that right here, and there's actually a 22.5, and it says you can do 5 waves at 4.5 inches each. So that would be 5, and then you'd have waves that are this size right here, 4.5 inches. Can you see that? Okay. So if we just wanted to use their recommendations and do it, we could have these measurements and just start marking it out. You won't have the same size waves. One's going to be 4.5, the other's going to be 6.5, and you're going to have about a 2-inch difference in your wave. It won't look bad, it'll look fine, but you know, you might want to have the same size waves. Okay, so what we know so far is, according to that chart, we have 59.5 inches on the top and the bottom, and it said that we could make 9 waves at 6.5 inches, and on the side that was 22.5, we can make 5 waves that are 4.5 inches. Okay, this would be fine. Now if you want to try to make your waves a little closer together as far as size, we can figure that out. One thing I do need to tell you is that on each size you need to have an odd number of waves, because you need to have it balanced, and you need to make sure that the corners, when you do your corners, the waves are going the right direction. When I look at this, just using my knowledge of math and numbers, I know that we could either go 7 waves here, or we could go 3 waves. Now, if we go 3 waves, let's see what that would be. 3 waves, we'll just take 22.5 and divide by 3, is 7.5. So we could have the waves being 7.5 inches on the side, so they would be bigger than the top ones, but again, they're an inch closer. I really don't want 3. I don't think it's enough. I want more of a waved side. You might like 3, that's fine. I would rather have more than 3. So the other one would be 7. If we did 7 waves, we can say 22.5 divided by 7. That is 3.214. So we're looking at about 3.5 inches on our waves, and that's not very big. I really don't want to put 3.5 inch waves, because up here I would have to go really huge in the number of waves to get 3.5. it would probably be close to 18. And you know, can't have 18, it'd probably be 17, somewhere in there. And I don't want 17 waves. So I don't want this one for sure. You could do this one, or we can stick with 5. Now the other thing, we could go down on this one and make, or we could go up the number of waves and make this one smaller. So if we go up by an odd number and do 11, we can go 59.5 divide by 11, and that's going to be 5.4, which is close to 5.5. So 11 waves at 5.5 inches. Now that's not too bad. That would give me more than twice the number of waves on the top and bottom, which would be good, but they'd only be an inch difference. So when we look at our template here and we look to see, so we've got 5.5, and I've got tape right there at 5.5, and then 4.5 would be here. They're really not that much difference. Not much difference at all, okay? I kind of like that number. Now, if we do this, let's see how big, whenever you're doing this, if the numbers don't come out exact, that middle wave is going to either be smaller or larger. So let's see how big that middle wave would be. So 11 waves at 5.5 inches, that's easy to figure out. 11 times 5.5, that will give you the distance. That's 60 inches and 60.5 inches across. Now our quilt top was just 59.5 inches, so we're an inch over. That means that middle wave is going to be 6.5 inches. That's not too much, that's fine. We won't even notice it, okay? So that would be fine. Now this one right here, this was an exact number because we found 22.5 on the chart. This right here wasn't an exact number, so the middle wave would have been a different size in this one too. Let's see what size it would have been. 9 times 6.5, 58.5. And so it would be an inch smaller in the middle on this one, okay? No, this wave right here is going to be 1 inch smaller in the middle. This wave right here is going to be 1 inch larger in the middle. I think I've got that right. So our numbers get confusing. So I am going to go ahead. I hope I have you very confused already. I know I am. I'm going to go ahead and keep my 5 waves at 4.5 according to the chart, but I'm going to change this one right here, and I'm going to do 11 waves at 5.5. So I'm going to write myself a note right here. 11 waves at 5.5, and I'm going to write 5 waves at 4.5, okay? That's what we're doing. All right, for our demonstration, we're going to do it on a side because you can see the whole side here and you'll see all of it done, and we can measure it out pretty quickly. Now, according to the directions, we need to take our big ruler and we need to make a 1 inch line away from the edge of our quilt or our runner. So just between those 2 lines that we had drawn earlier, we are going to make a 1 inch line. Okay, again, I'm using a friction pin. It will come off. I normally don't use it on the tops, but because I want you to see the line, I made it with a friction pin. Okay, so what we need to do now is on the sides we said, let's pull this down and make sure we're doing it right. We said 5 waves at 4.5 inches. Okay, so let me go ahead and take and put some washi tape on the 4.5 so we can get it marked. 4.5, and 4.5. And I'm going to just tear that so it doesn't get in my way. Okay, so now we have our wavelength marked. Now what we're going to do is I am going to be doing the pointed corners. And so according to the book, if you're doing the pointed corners, you need to start with your waves going down. Okay, so I'm going to be using my wave down first. So that means it's going to go down like this. So let's go over here. And let's put our get away from the glare. Let's put our ruler. Now here is the line that we had drawn for our corner earlier. Here's the 1-inch line. Right there is the intersection. We are going to put this 4.5 edge right here on that point. So it's going there. Then we're going to put this other 4.5 point right on the line. Okay? So we have the point here and here, and they both are on the line. So make sure that they are on the line. And we are going to do that with the pin. Just draw it with a pin. Okay, there's our first one. Okay. Now we're going to flip it and we're going to go the second one. This time right here where that wave met that 1-inch line is our point. And so 4.5 inches right on the edge, right there, and 4.5 inches on the line, right there. And okay guys, my storage on my camera went out on me, so we need to back up a little bit. I didn't get too far, so but I did get some lines, so we're gonna ignore these lines. I believe I've got these first 2 curves to right here. So once we get these 2 curves, we don't want to do the center one. Remember, we're going to have 5 curves or 5 waves on this side. So don't do this middle one. Let's go over here and do these 2 because we want to do the middle last. That's the one where we're going to have either larger or smaller. So we are going to do the same thing. Since we started with a wave going down over here, we need to start with the wave going down over here. We find this intersection right here, 1-inch line, and this side of the block, and we put our 4.5 inch mark right on that point. And then over here, 4.5 inches right on the line, and then draw that line. Flip our ruler, again, do the same thing, 4.5 inches here, 4.5 inches here, draw our line, and then we're going to pretend like we don't have this line. And so right here is our middle wave, and we do this one at the very end. This one is going to come out right because remember in the book it had this number in the chart. All of those are exact. So this one, we know this wave's going to be 4.5 inches. So let's just go ahead and see. So I turn my wave down, so it's going down. 4.5 on this point here, 4.5 on this point here, and there is our wave right there. Now we're going to be having the wave on the top and the bottom. That middle wave is going to be different. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through, I'm going to change my measurement to the 5.5 that I said 2 while ago. So I will change this to 5.5. I'm going to go ahead and do the other side off the camera so that when I take this tape off, I'm done with it. And then I'm going to go over here to these and I'm going to start doing the 5.5. When I get to the middle, I'll bring you back and show you how we make that last wave in the middle. Okay, so I'm bringing you back now like I said I would. I have been working on, I've got the sides marked and I've got the top marked and we're going to work on the bottom. Now you could go ahead and do it like we said. Just go ahead and do the 5 on this side, the 5.5 inches, 5 on this side, 5.5 inches, and then leave the center to be whatever's left. But I noticed when I did that on my top one that it was a little bit small, and so it didn't look real good to me. And again, it probably wouldn't be noticed by anybody but me, but I'm going to try to make an adjustment here to show you how I do that. So I have, I guess, 4 on this side and then 4 on this side, and so I have 3 left because we're going to have 11 waves altogether. These are all 5.5. I have about between 15.25 and 15.5 is the distance between this last point here and here. So that's the distance that I have left. So between 15.25 and 15.5. Well, if I divided that by 2, or by 3, excuse me, because we have 3 waves left, I could have each one just a tiny bit over 5, and we could have them all about the same size. So I think what I'll do is I think I'm going to change for these last 3. I think I'm going to do 5.25, and then whatever happens on the inside, we'll just leave it at that. But it's going to be right in there. It might be like 5 or something like that. So 5.25, and these rulers have all 1/4, 1/2, and 3/4 inch marks on them. So if I can get that one on there, with it being straight, there we go. Okay, so now I've got 5.25. The other ones were 5.5. I'm just reducing them because I have 3 left, and I don't want my middle one to be real scrawny. So we are going to start with this one right here, and we're going to match it up where that one ended right there on the line. And whenever you're doing this, you can even follow that hill, that line there on your ruler. That works too. But just make sure your tape is in the right spot, and then that you're measuring inside. I almost measured one of my hills a while ago on the outside of my tape, so just keep that in mind as you're going. If something doesn't work out, check and see if you measured it correctly. So we got one there. Now I'm going to go to this side, and we're going to do the same thing over here. And there we've got it right there, and I'm following this little line right here, and right about there. Okay. Now we have 1 wave left. Let's see if that matches 5.25 or if it's just a little bit different. 5.25, it's a little bit different. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my ruler right here, and it is exactly, gosh, it looks like it's 5 inches. So we can just do 5 inches, and I'm not even going to tape this because it's just our last one. So I'm going to put it on the 5-inch line right here. I don't have tape on it, and the 5-inch line here. So let's see what that ends up being. Perfect. So now we have our waves, and they look really good. So now before we start cutting all of these edges out, we need to do our corners. And on the back here, I am doing, let's look at this again here. You have 2 corner choices. You have your rounded corners that look like this. You have your pointed corners that stick out a little ways like that. Okay. I am going to do a pointed corner because it's a little bit square, and I kind of like that look for a bed runner. Now if you're doing this one, you just take a piece of paper the size of your of your corner and then fold it in half, and you just cut it, and then whatever curve that is the curve you use. But if you're doing the pointed corner, on the very back of your book, you have some templates that you can trace and cut out. But they only go to 4-inch wide borders. And this, we said, was a 3 3/4 inch border that we have left right here. And so I just took, it goes by half inches. We've got 5 inches, 4.5 inches, 4 inches. So I just took a ruler like this one, and I just took and went 1/2 inch from that line and just made dots all the way around, and then I connected those dots, so I have a 3.5 inch piece of template right here. And even though this is 3 3/4, I could use the 3.5. I could make it match. So I had just put a piece of paper on there, traced it, cut it out. So what we're going to do is we are going to position this so that we get this line going nicely with this. And you don't have to be perfect. Bring this down a little bit. And my line was probably not that perfect. But basically, there we have it. It's coming up, going around, just like that, okay? And I'm gonna do that with all 4 corners. So there we have that. And now what I'm going to do, and this is always the scary thing to do, is now it tells you to take and sew on this line and then cut it about 1/8 inch away. And that is before it's quilted, but I really recommend that you quilt it with a straight edge first, and I think your long armor would want you to as well. I don't think it works as well if you quilt it afterwards. So I would quilt it first. It makes it easier on everyone. And then after you quilt it, just on the outside edge of that line, I would just trim it, just right on the outside of it. Just follow it along, trim it all down, and once you have it trimmed, we're going to be ready to bind. And there we have our waved edge, and I think it turned out really good. So you don't even really notice that these are different when you've got them set up like that. One thing that I would recommend that I thought of after I was cutting these, because I was kind of lining it and laying my corners on top of each other to see if they were all about the same, and actually I eyeballed it really good. But you can, if you're wanting to see if all your rounded corners look about the same, just take your one and lay it on top before you cut the second one, and just see if they line up on top of each other correctly. And then if not, just fix them and you'll be good. But they actually lined up real well, so I was happy with that. But if you just did 2 sides, the top and one of the sides, I think it would be really easy just to take the side. You could go ahead and do an inch line or whatever you wanted to do, and just go ahead and lay that other side on, like if this was the straight edge here, and just trace your quilt as a template, because it's going to be the same size on both sides. So that was just something I thought, well, you know, that would make it easier. You'd only have to measure out 2 sides and then just trace the other one on the back for the other. So that's an option I think would be a good idea, and I think that's what I'll try with my bigger quilt. So we now have this all cut out, and I am now ready to bind it. So I need to make some binding. So I need to see if the binding calculator will do waved edges. I don't think it will. And what I'll do is I'll figure out how much a straight edge would be, and then I know that it's going to need more binding than a straight edge. Since you have these hills that are going up instead of just going straight across, you do have a little bit more binding that you're going to need, and that way I'll know how much. Now, I did do a tutorial on how to make bias binding using a fat quarter, but that's not going to be enough for this, so you'd have to do a couple of fat quarters of the same fabric, or you can use a larger amount of fabric and do it. Also, just cutting your fabric on the diagonal for a large piece like this works really well as well. But I'm gonna go figure out what kind of, or which fabric I want to put as binding, and I'm kind of thinking of using the same fabric as I have for my border. That way it won't take away from my border, so we'll see. All right, so if you're new to making bias binding, I'm just going to show you how I cut mine. And I'm using 3/4 of a yard, and it's probably going to be too much. I'd rather have it too much than not enough. It's very hard to get an estimate of how much binding you're going to need on a curved edge quilt. If it were a straight edged quilt, I would need over 200 inches for this piece, and I could get 200 inches with a 1/2 of a yard, so I thought I'm just going to go ahead and do 3/4 of a yard, and I know I'll have extra and I can use it for a pillow or something like that. So first of all, I just have cut nice straight edges, making sure that they are 90 degrees with this fold right here, and they are nice and straight. I have my binding up here, and this is just cut off the bolt. It is 3/4 of a yard. Okay, so I'm just going to lay it out flat, and my selvages are at my left and my right. Right here's a selvage, and over here's a selvage. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take, let's see, I think I'm going to work, or I'm going to take this bottom corner right here, and you can do any corner, it's fine. But I'm going to take this bottom corner, and I am going to bring it so that it matches up with my edge, and so that this edge right here is matched up. The selvage is matched up exactly with that cut edge, and it's right, the corner point, or this triangular point, is right on that corner. Okay, so make sure they're matched up. You can cut your selvage off if you want, but I'm fine having it on there. Okay, and then I'm just hand pressing it to make sure everything's nice and flat and there's no wrinkles or surprises that are going to occur here in a minute. Okay, so this right here now is our bias edge. Okay, this, if we wanted to, we could cut right here and trim off this fold and then start cutting at this angle with measuring with this line right here, but my ruler is not long enough and it would take a lot of slides of the ruler to get it all cut. So we're just going to fold it so that we can get it all under the ruler and make it easy to cut. So then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to continue to fold on this bias. So now I'm going to take this top corner right here, and here is our bias, so we're just putting our bias on top of our bias. So that bias fold on top of the bias fold, and we are just bringing it down so that it matches right here. And then you can kind of take your hand and just make sure you don't have any folds in there or loose fabric. And you want to make sure you match your edges of that fold right there. And just keep track. This is our bias right here. Okay? We've got 2 folds right there, and that's our bias. Well, if I started cutting on this now, and let's see, I'll just leave it like that. If I were left-handed and I started cutting on this now, it would start cutting okay here, but as I got further down, my ruler is still too short for it, okay? So we can fold on this bias again. And basically it's the same thing as if you were folding your straight fabric for regular binding. You just fold it several times with your straight edges matched up, and it allows you to cut through more fabric, but you get a long strip. So I am just matching this up, and I'm going to go ahead and go all the way to that edge. So you can see right there is that corner. Just using every bit of that fold to match right there. Now this is the one that you kind of got to be careful with, because it can get kind of thick in there and you might have a hidden fold, and I feel something right here, but I think I can work it out. If not, I can take my hand in here and flatten it out. There we go. There's a little one right there, but I think I got it. Yeah, I got it. So just make sure those fabrics are laying flat. This one I've got folded back. Okay, so here is my fabric underneath there, and I can now at this point use my ruler and go all the way across, right? I can start here and I can cut and my ruler is fine. But you know, why have this hanging off? Let me flip this fabric over again. This is my diagonal side. Okay, like that. So why have this hanging off? We can just go ahead and fold this right on this line right here. Okay. And now if I've got everything matched up, make sure you have those edges that are at the fold nice and flush with each other. Now I have a nice little package here that's just folded nicely, and I can take slices out of it. Now I want to make sure you know you've got a good, and I can even use the lines of my mat here if you want. You can probably see better. You want to make sure that it's nice, the edges are nice and parallel with each other. And that looks good. And looking in the camera here, it looks good back here. And this looks good. So as long as everything's nicely squared up, you've got it folded correctly. So here is our nice little package that we're going to be cutting off of. And here is our diagonal line right here. It's all these folds. That's where all those folds are. I'm going to just move this around because I'm right-handed. And I'm going to cut from this edge. Now, if you have a ruler, you can just use your ruler, and first of all you're going to trim that edge nice and straight, and then you're going to start cutting your binding, and I'm going to do mine at 2.5 inches, but I'm going to use my Stripology ruler, and I have the bigger one and it would actually go all the way across, but if you have the small one it would do fine too. So I would just line it up. So my first cut's going to be taking off that fold. And then after that, I just have to find the squares for 2.5 inches, and I can get several cuts. Now this is the, what size is this? I'm not sure what size. It goes up to 12 inches by 12 inches. And it's a really handy size, especially for like pre-cuts and stuff like that, your fat quarters and things. But let me grab my extra large one too. Now this is my extra large one, and it cuts really nice long pieces of fabric. It is 20 inches by, it goes to 13 here, but it's actually got a line for 13.5 up there. So it's quite large, and I can just lay this on here and get lots more cuts without having to move my ruler. So let's use this one. And in order to use my large Stripology ruler, or any Stripology ruler, you choose a line that you want to match up with your bottom edge. And I'm putting it right on that dark line. I'm giving myself enough room right here where my blades can go, just like this. And I see my fabric right here that's sticking out. I'm going to go ahead and turn this under too. That would be fine. So let's just turn that under since that's at the base. Okay. So I am just lining it up with that bottom line. You can line it up with any line on here. And now that it's nice and straight, I'm going to have it scooted over about 1/4 of an inch so I can take that end where the folds are off. And then I want to look up here. It's really important when you look up here that you have a nice straight parallel line. And I am noticing that it gets a little bit thicker over here, but I think it's because, let's see. There we go. Let me go to this little light line because it's a thinner line and I can see better. Okay, that one and that one. And see it's a little bit off, so what I'm going to do is I think it's this top piece right here. I'm just going to pull it a little tighter. And press it out nice and flat. Okay. This is binding and it's bias binding, so if it's not exact, you're going to be okay, but you want to get it as close as you can. And I like to have it pretty accurate. So there's that and there's that. I think that looks good. So now that I have my lines lined up, I'm going to go over here and all I have to do is just put my blade in that little hole and then cut right there. Now we're going through several layers of fabric, so be sure you have a sharp blade. Then I'm doing 2.5 inches, and on the Stripology rulers they are marked with a black square. So all I have to do is follow the black squares and cut on those lines. If I were doing 1.5 inches, I would do the stars, the black stars. And it does tell you right here what those symbols are. These rulers have a lot of fun uses and I really enjoy having them. And just really easy to make your own jelly roll strips. And so that's what I like to use mine for. But it's great for binding too. And all I'm doing is just watching for those black squares. And when I see the next one, I'm cutting. And it has little grippers underneath this ruler so that it doesn't move, and that's nice. Now I can continue going over here and I'm going to get shorter pieces. I may not use those, so I'm going to hold off. If I need a little extra, I can come back and make some binding out of this. So let's take this up. This is our waist, and here is our bias binding. And this first one here is going to be nice and long. You're going to get 2 of them, and as you can see, there is a nice stretch right there. So this is perfect. So I'm just going to take all of these pieces of bias binding and I am going to sew them together just like I do regular binding. I am going to, cross over like this at my sewing machine, right sides together, and I will just match up that lower piece right there. And there's probably ways where you can save some of these corners and do it a little different, but this is the way I'm going to do it. And then after I have laid it out like this with right sides together and I have made them like this on my sewing machine, I am going to stitch from corner to corner of this one and of this one underneath there. And when I open them up, if I have stitched them correctly, I will have a nice straight piece of binding, and I will have a diagonal stitch there that will keep my binding from getting too bulky. So that's how I cut my bias binding. I'll let you know how much this makes, and you might not need to even make 3/4 of a yard's worth, so we'll see what it is. And here is my binding. It is all finished. I ended up, from using that 3/4 of a yard of fabric, getting about 350 inches. And of course I had that corner left over that I didn't cut, and so that'll go in my scrap pile. And this will be more than enough for this runner. Now, I could use it for binding a pillow to go along with it. In fact, I was even thinking I could make a pillow of this snowflake and a pillow of this snowflake, but make them larger. And if you need to know how to make a block larger, I have a video on that, and I have some worksheets that help you figure that out. You can easily increase the size of these. They were, I believe, they are 8-inch finished blocks, so I think a 16-inch block using that pattern right there would just be doubling that, and that would be easy to double. So I'm kind of thinking I might make a couple pillows to go along with it. And so I'm now getting ready to apply this to my runner here, and I'm going to put it on the back like I do with my other bindings. And I will just start, I always start at the bottom, and just find a spot to start. And remember, you leave a tail. And so I'll leave a lot of a tail. And so basically I will just go like this and sew it on, and then I will flip it over once it's sewn on and attach it to the front. So I will show you what it looks like when it's finished. All right, there it is, all bound and complete. I think it turned out just really, really nice. On the binding, I ended up doing it just the way I always do with the machine. I have a tutorial on how to machine bind a quilt, and I used, I sewed it to the back, flipped it up to the front, then I glued it down with an Elmer's glue stick, and then I just zipped across right around, following it really close to the edge, and it turned out really, really nice. And you can see it on this side, it looks really good, and I can give you some close-ups. So there we have it. You can see stitched very nicely, and I think it looks just as good as the hand stitched. And on the back, it looks really nice too. Okay. Also, I did remember to put one of my tags on it, and if you had downloaded the free tag PDF that I gave you with the, I believe it was Sew Samplers December box reveal, I put it in that, and I had this tag, it's a little blurry there, this tag in that collection of, it was Valentine's and winter, and I have it in a vertical way and then a horizontal way, and on this side it has the snowman, and on this side it says baby it's cold outside. So I thought that was cute to put as a tag on it. So that is what I ended up using, and if you did not get that, I will put a link to that video in the description box below, and you can go pick that up. You'll probably need to also watch how to do those tags, and I have another video for that, but they turn out really cute. So there it is. I am very proud of it. I love that waved border. And again, if you don't have that ruler, it's a really nice ruler, and I think it's going to look nice on some of my up-and-coming quilts. So I hope to be using that. So thank you so much for watching. Remember, like I said last time, YouTube's algorithms are currently changing, and I've seen it on a lot of the videos that I watch, that the established YouTubers are finding that they're not getting as many views because right now YouTube is pushing their shorts, and they're trying to keep up with TikTok, Instagram, and stuff like that. And so the longer videos, or just your regular sized videos, are not getting as much time or the real estate place on like the home page. They're being pushed farther down. And so anytime that you like a video, I would really appreciate it if you share it out, and that way more people can see my videos. You can share it out on Facebook, Instagram, any place you have an account. Just click that share button below and it will just, link to whatever you have, and you can just share it on those pages. So I really appreciate anybody that's doing that, and it will really help my channel, because I do want to keep continuing sharing all of this stuff with you, even though it's very frustrating to do a lot of work and then YouTube limiting the viewing of a video. So I hope that everyone that enjoys this will find a way of sharing it, letting your friends know, and I know so many of you do. I'm talking to the choir here, but thank you so much for doing that. So I am going to finish this up right now, and I hope that if you wanted to make this, you get a chance to. It's a lot of fun, and I think you're going to love it when you're finished. I'd love to see it in different colorways or different patterns. So if you make it, please share it. You can share it on Instagram, and there just link at Blue Rooster Farm 23, and it will be linked to my Instagram account, and we can all see anybody's projects that they're making right there. So I really appreciate those people sharing those. It's so much fun to see. Thanks again for watching, and as always, I hope to see you back here soon. Bye bye.